So now we're going to look at the psychological factors that affect consumer behavior. And the reason we give it a special module is because it is a very complicated process to look at. And there are four things in that kind of factor: motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitudes. So let's start with the motivation process. What is motivation? So basically, motivation is what makes us get out of the house and go and buy something. Okay, so basically motivation is something that makes us move. Now, let's see how motivation is described in psychology, and this is also how we use it in marketing. So we have first what we call the present state. The present state is where I am now. And I just took an example of Jennifer Hudson at the time, but it obviously can relate to anyone and anything. But in this case, I'm looking at the weight. So the present state, let's assume that I feel that I'm a bit overweight, and my desired end state is to look thinner. Maybe in her case, it's because she knew that she's going to be in the spotlight, she knew she was going to perform, and she felt that this would be a better situation for her. But motivation will happen when there is a discrepancy between where I want to be and where I am now. And this discrepancy will cause tension, and this tension will then cause the drive that will make me move. Now, different products and different services can try to help me achieve the desired end state that I want. So motivation, then, is a need that I need to complete or satisfy. And I'm trying to see, well, how can I satisfy it? How can I reach that desired end state? Now, those kind of motives can be physiological, like I'm hungry, like we discussed before. I'm hungry, what am I going to eat? Or they can be psychological. For example, I want to have higher self-esteem. I want to be stronger personality. I want to be able to achieve more, and so forth. Now, many different motives also involve different type of purchases. For example, I want to look better than I look now, but let's say I don't have the money. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to look for better value, maybe on eBay, maybe on Amazon. Now, Maslow is a very famous psychological researcher that presents a hierarchy of needs that try to help understand, well, what kind of motives come first, physiological or psychological? And also, is there a relationship between a few goals? What happens if I want to look good, but I also want to lose weight, but I also want to save money? Which goal will be the one that I will achieve first? This is an example of how a product can help me achieve my desired end state. And we know that there's a lot of magazines out there that talk about the perfect diet, the perfect exercise, and so forth, because that desired end state, to look perfect, is something that many people in the United States strive for, and hence they will buy those products that will promise them assistance in closing that discrepancy between the current state and the desired end state. So going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are two types of needs that Maslow discusses. One is psychogenic and the other is biogenic. So one is psychological and one is physical. Now, one of the main things that we need to understand when it comes to Maslow is that he believed that first there's the physiological needs and only then there are the psychological needs. So let's look at the diagram. So here, if you look at those two are basically physiological. One has to do with being able to eat and sleep and drink, and the other one has to do with safety, being protected. Then belongingness, ego needs, and self-actualization are more psychological needs. Now, based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're hungry, you will not be interested in achieving any of these goals. However, if you achieved already hunger and you achieved already safety, then this is the time where you can start thinking about psychological needs. Now, in general, one can see that, because if I'm hungry, why would I care about buying a Gucci bag? However, in reality, there's a lot of cases where we see that Maslow hierarchy of needs not necessarily work in the sense of hierarchy. But it is something to keep in mind, and it is one of the bases of motivational goals that we study in psychology as well as in marketing. Perception now is another factor that we want to consider when we're talking about psychology. And the reason is that in marketing, we don't care about reality. We care about how consumers perceive the situation and how they perceive the brand. And this actually will have to do with the senses, the way we see things, the way we smell, the way we taste, the way we touch, but also what is the interpretation of what we see and what we smell and what we hear and so forth. So this diagram basically shows me, first of all, the sensory stimuli. And if we are healthy human beings, all of us will have the ability to see, to hear, smell, and so forth. Why? Because we all share the same types of body parts. The difference, though, starts in those three factors. One of them is exposure. Obviously, if I can't see something, then I can't see it. So if I am watching a TV show and commercials come up, but I went to the bathroom or I went to get a snack, I was not exposed to that commercial. So I've never seen that commercial. And hence, I can never pay attention to it, and I can never interpret what the marketer was trying to tell me. So one of the things that we pay a lot of attention in marketing is what are the media habits of our consumers? Where would they see our media? Where would they see the commercials? Another is where would they see the product? So when we do Google search, it's very important that our company will pop up first, because without exposure, there will be no attention and no interpretation. However, the fact that I saw a commercial on TV doesn't mean I paid attention to it. Maybe I was talking to someone. Maybe I was texting on my phone. So the fact I was in the room while the commercial was showing doesn't mean I paid attention. Again, if I didn't pay attention, there's not going to be any interpretation. Finally, let's assume I did pay attention. How does the marketer know that I interpret what I saw the right way? And this is where really culture comes in and social factors comes in, because interpretation means what meaning do we give to different stimuli that we see, hear, smell, and so forth. So then what might affect perception? So to sum basically up what I just talked about, the level of attention we give to different pieces of information is extremely important. And in marketing, we like to divide it into selective attention, selective distortion, and selective retention. So selective attention is when people pay attention to some information, but not necessarily to others. So for example, if you're in a classroom and the teacher is talking, there could be a lot of other noises around. Maybe someone is moving a chair, maybe a car is passing by. However, your brain decides to pay attention only to the teacher, hopefully. Hence, you will not pay attention to the other noises, and you might actually not even be aware that there was an ambulance crossing the street, for example. Selective distortion is when people tend to interpret something in a way that supports what they want to believe is true. So for example, remember that smoking example, which I mentioned before, that the fact that it can give you health issues is not something that actually frightened a lot of people. That's because of selective distortion. You hear that, let's say, there's a higher probability of getting lung cancer if you smoke. But then you say, well, I know this person and he smoked and he lived till he's 90. And I know this person who smoked and he didn't get lung cancer. So that's called selective distortion. You pay more attention to the information that fits with what you want to do, and you try to ignore the information that contradicts what you like to do. And then selective retention is how much do I really remember what was said to me. So for example, when it comes to brands, let's say that I'm a Verizon client and I see an AT&T commercial. So I might not remember what AT&T tells me as much as remembering what Verizon tells me, because Verizon is my company and I'm a loyal customer, and I want to make sure that it fits with the fact that I'm their client. So psychological factors then cannot be completed without understanding what beliefs and attitudes are. And belief is basically something that a consumer thinks is true without any ability to actually prove or disprove it. So it can be knowledge, it can be opinion, and it can be faith. It's a little bit like I believe in God. Do you have a proof that God exists? Well, not an objective one. Because if you did, then it wouldn't be a belief, it would be a fact. And the same is in marketing. I believe that Gucci sells higher quality bags as compared to, let's say, Zara. Can someone really prove it? Well, maybe if someone did an experiment. But usually there's no marketing research about that, and you just believe it because you pay more, and you are told that, well, of course I pay more because this is handmade as compared to, let's say, machine-made. Attitudes, on the other hand, follows beliefs. And attitude is how much I like or dislike something on a continuum. So for example, I can say I like Coke better than Pepsi. That will be a positive attitude toward Coke more than it is toward Pepsi. I can also say, though, why do you like Coke more than Pepsi? And I'll say because I believe Coke is healthier than Pepsi. Now this is a belief. There's no way I can prove that Coke is healthier than Pepsi, again, unless someone did marketing research. However, because of that belief, I have influenced the attitude toward the brand. Now, one of the things that are very difficult is to change attitude. Why? Because they are based on beliefs. And how can you refute a belief if you can't do marketing research? So Volvo, for example, for many years was the car known to be the safest car. And when it started, it was the safest car because of the way it was built compared to the rest of the cars at that time. Relatively, it was safer. However, today, there's really no research to show if Volvo is better in its safety features than other cars that exist there. Yet many consumers still believe the Volvo is the safest car, and if you're looking for a benefit that's safe, you will go to Volvo, and hence you will have a better attitude. PC, for example, is not as creative as the Mac. So a lot of people believe that, even now, even though both of them sort of can do both things, there is still a big perception that Mac is cool and Mac is more creative, and that's the reason why people sometimes pay double or even triple for a Mac laptop as compared to a PC laptop. So if a company can, they want to fit their existing attitudes instead of trying to change them. Because changing attitude means changing beliefs, and changing beliefs is very difficult.